Welcome to 5 Points Blues presentation of Back to the Basics. Everything you wanted to know about Cowboys football, but were too afraid to ask. Here are your hosts, Nikki Harrison and Christy Scales.
Welcome back to the basics. Everything you wanted to know about Cowboys football, but we're too afraid to ask. I'm Nikki Harrison here with Christy Scales.
And
Welcome. Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year. It's actually our first podcast
That's
since
right.
the calendar turned, and
Been a
lots to
while.
talk about with a review of last season and what to anticipate in the off season. But I tell you, just from a geeking out as a football fan, there's nothing better than having 2 playoff games on a Saturday and then 2 on a. Well, okay, it's better to have the Cowboys involved.
Absolutely.
But man,
Yes.
it was a great. It was a
There were
fun
some
weekend
good
of
games.
football.
Yes, some great games. The Tennessee game with Marcus Mariota.
Yes.
Okay, so Kate, let's get started. Kate from Atlanta, Georgia, she sent in a great question. She says, what was the deal with the Titans quarterback throwing a touchdown pass to himself in Saturday's playoff game? How can a quarterback be eligible to catch his own pass?
Ooh, very good one. First of all, thank you for watching the podcast in Atlanta, Georgia, Kate. But that's actually a question. Babe Laufenberg and I, for over 20 years, have done Cowboys 101s, and we'd always throw in a husband stumper at the end, something that the ladies could take home to their husbands or boyfriends or to the guys at work and get them with a question, and that's one of them. And the answer is that a quarterback is eligible to catch a pass if and only if he starts the play in the shotgun position and not under center. If a quarterback were to line up under center, he would not be eligible to catch a pass.
Oh, so
Okay?
if he had been-
So on this particular play, Mariota did start in a shotgun. But what was unusual about this one, it's not like Mariota was just running around. That's the Titans quarterback, that he just tossed the ball up in the air to himself. What happened was the Titans were playing the Chiefs. This was the Saturday afternoon game, and they're near the goal line, and he's trying to throw a touchdown pass, and he gets a pass rush, and he runs to his right, and then he scrambles to his left, and he's just about to go past the line of scrimmage when he jumps up and throws the ball, and one of the Chiefs' defensive backs, Darrelle Revis, one of the great cornerbacks of his generation, swats the ball back. It goes up in the air and right into the hands of Mariota, whose momentum has him going forward towards the goal line, and Mariota catches the deflected ball and has the presence of mind to lunge towards the end zone and put the ball out, and he actually touched the inside of the pylon with that football and scored a touchdown. And it's the first time in NFL history, in playoff history, that a quarterback has ever thrown a touchdown pass to himself, and it's only the second time that it has happened in an NFL game. And it was great because the game was being broadcast by the Monday Night Football crew for ESPN, and John Gruden, who once coached Brad Johnson, and a lot of Cowboy fans remember Brad Johnson not only from his time, he was a Super Bowl winning quarterback for the Bucs when John Gruden was there, but of course Brad Johnson was a backup quarterback here to Tony Romo later in his career. But Brad Johnson is the other player who in NFL history in a regular season game that threw a touchdown pass to himself.
That's
the only other
fascinating.
quarterback. And that happened regular season, and Mariota is the first in playoff history.
playoff. So if Mariota had been behind the center,
That's
then that
my
same thing would have
understanding.
happened.
Yeah, and in fact, the referee, if you go back on YouTube or if you still have the game on your DVR, you'll hear the referee say, as he's explaining the call, they reviewed the play. First of all scoring plays are eligible for review. Okay.
And who decides that? Do the refs decide we need to review this play? Or?
Well, that would be different from a challenge, right? Each quarterback, each head coach has the red challenge flag, and you can throw it twice a game. If you win your first 2 challenges, you can challenge a third time if you have a timeout left and haven't burned all of your timeouts. But there are certain plays that are automatically reviewed by league rule.
Got it.
A scoring play, and then when there's a turnover. So an interception, a fumble, things like that. Now, some are so obvious that they don't have to be reviewed, but
Gotcha.
But
Gotcha.
yeah, the league and the reviews. This past year, 2017, was the first year that the decisions were actually made in the league office, right? So when the referee would go over and put on the headsets, and instead of getting under the hood and the little thing, behind the bench, they had a person with the Microsoft Surface tablet, and the guy, the referee would put on the headphones and he would talk to the replay officials at the league office in New York who were looking at the same thing as the referee, and they would tell the referee what the ruling was. Whereas before, the referee would be under the hood, and then he could communicate with the league office, but it was up to the referee to decide whether the call was upheld or overturned.
Okay.
But yeah, the one thing they were reviewing with Marcus Mariota play was, I mentioned how he was scrambling around. He went to his right and then he went to his left, and he was approaching the line of scrimmage, and when he jumped and threw the ball. And so I think one thing that they were reviewing was whether or not he had gone past the line. If he had gone past the line of scrimmage, then that would have been you couldn't have thrown it, right? Illegal pass. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. All right. Well, give us a call, 214-872-2102. That's 214-872-2102. We know there have been some coaching changes that have taken place. One of my favorites, Rich Bisaccia, is now going to be in Oakland.
Mine too. Yeah. Coach Bisaccia has been the Cowboys special teams coordinator the past 5 seasons. I actually talked to him over the weekend. I've been friends with his wife, Jeannie, and son Richie, who's now out of college but played college football at Middle Tennessee State, and of course Maddie, the daughter, see her in the hallways here at the Star as she begins her career, finishing school and starting her career. And so I'm really sad to see him go. But so we got some
we get
some questions about the coaching changes. Okay.
Grant in Bryan, Texas, his question is, the Fort Worth Star-Telegram had a story over the weekend speculating how much longer Rod Marinelli, defense coordinator, will coach. Is Marinelli still on board? And what do you think of the changes on the coaching staff?
Oh, Rod's back. I was just in his office last week, and he was showing me some stuff for next season. Rod Marinelli is 68 years old, and I think he may turn 69 by the time next season begins. And so I think just because of his age, some people speculate whether or not he's going to retire. But no, Marinelli has as much vim and vigor as ever before, and love Rod, and it's great. I would say that the way that the defense really came on at the end of the season,
definitely
a few different reasons. One is that Hitchens was healthy. Jalen Smith had improved throughout the year. Sean Lee was getting past his hamstring injury, but in particular, the young defensive backs were really coming on. Xavier Woods was filling in, who is a safety, but he was playing the slot, cornerback nickel slot inside in place of Orlando Scandrick, who missed the last 4 games with a back injury.
Yes.
And then you had Cheeto Awuzie, who missed nearly half the season with a hamstring injury, and he finally, was settling in at one starting cornerback, and then of course Jordan Lewis, who battled injuries through training camp and early in the season, and he was settling in over at the other side. And so and then you had DeMarcus Lawrence with such a sensational season, rightfully rewarded with a trip to the Pro Bowl. And the Cowboy defense finished really strong, and I can tell you that Rod is really, really excited about prospects going into the offseason. Of course, the big question, 2 big questions in returns to 2 of the top producers on the defense. DeMarcus Lawrence is an unrestricted free agent. He just finished his 4th season. He was a 2nd-round pick in 2014, and so the standard rookie contract for anyone other than a first-rounder is 4 years. And so DeMarcus finished that 4-year, $5.5 million contract. Now he's unrestricted, and he's going to cash in big time. But the Cowboys, obviously, they want to sign him to a long-term contract, which would be very lucrative for DeMarcus. But if the Cowboys can't reach a number that DeMarcus want and his agent want, then they can slap the franchise tag on him, which would be a 1-year deal for about 19. It's projected right now, but it's about $19.2 million.
And explain this. I want to go back to coaching, but since you brought up the franchise tag, explain what that is, because I remember when that happened a few years back with DeMarco. Was it DeMarco Murray?
Well, it happened with Dez Bryant.
It happened with Dez Bryant.
So
explain that.
A franchise tag, there are two tags. One is a franchise tag and one is a transition tag. And it's something that the league has that teams can utilize to clamp down on their most desired free agents.
Okay.
It's a way to keep them under
on the
control.
team. Okay.
Yes, And so DeMarcus Lawrence is the perfect example because he's going to cash in, all right?
Right.
14.5 sacks, Pro Bowl. A pass rushing elite defensive end gets paid elite money, and so if the Cowboys definitely want to retain his services.
Got it.
But they may not, want to do a super long-term guarantee. They may not, cap wise, a team may not be able to fit these young players. And it doesn't have to be a young player; it can be any player. But anyway. They can put a franchise tag on him, which would be a 1-year deal, and the salary would be the average of the top 5 players at that position. So an example
in
the league for the entire league.
Okay.
So Kirk Cousins, the Washington Redskins quarterback, played last year under a franchise tag. Okay? And so his year is up,
right?
And the Redskins have to make a decision with him, the same way the Cowboys have to make a decision with DeMarcus Lawrence. We're going to sign him to a long-term deal with a lot of guaranteed money and a big signing bonus, or will we slap the tag on him again? Now, because
you can slap it on more.
Well, you can, but if you do, then I believe it's a 20% raise.
Wow.
Okay, so Kirk Cousins, if he is franchise tagged again, then he would make even more. He would count something like $27 million against the cap projected amount in 2018. A transition tag is something where a franchise tag will lock you into your team, and it's kind of a placeholder because you slap the tag on in the spring, and then you have until the middle of the summer to come up with a long-term deal. So when the Cowboys tagged Dez Bryant, they had a couple of months to work out a deal.
Got it.
Okay.
Got it.
And so if that happens with DeMarcus, if they're unable to come up with a long-term deal, then he would play next year under the tag and then be an unrestricted free agent again the next season. A transition tag is a little bit, it's less money. I believe it's the average of the top 10 players at that position around the league instead of the top 5.
Okay.
And it has to do with draft picks and things like that. So but it's another way that teams use to restrict the movement of some of the best players in the league.
Gotcha.
Obviously, players hate tags.
Of course.
Dez hated the franchise tag because he was, basically they locked him up for another year, and you want to work out a deal, a long-term contract extension, so you can get a big bonus and guaranteed money.
Definitely. I get that. Okay. Well, this next question is taking us back to coaching. Matthew in McKinney, Texas, he wants to know, of all of the changes on the coaching staff, which will have the biggest effect in your opinion?
We mentioned Rich Bisaccia earlier.
Yeah.
And special teams coordinator. I would argue that over the past few years, and particularly this past year, the most consistent unit on the Cowboys was special teams. Special teams is also the most difficult to coach.
Really?
And that's because special teams, by the way, for those who don't know, special teams refers to anything in the kicking game. So it's kickoffs, it's punts, it's returning kickoffs, it's returning punts, it's field goals and extra points. Well, the players, it's an amalgam. It's a combination of players on offense and players on defense, and it's backup guys and sometimes third stringers. And so there's a lot of churning of the roster, and you don't have your first team star players necessarily.
Yeah.
The core special teams players for the Cowboys are guys like Kyle Wilbur, the backup linebacker, like Rod Smith, who really emerged as a backup running back this year.
Gotcha.
It's Jeff Heath, who was a starter this year at safety, but made his bones his first 4 years, or 3 years or 4 years, as a special team guy, as a backup
and
safety.
he was the backup kicker earlier in the season.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of kickers, Dan Bailey, and then, of course, punter Chris Jones, who to me was the special teams MVP this season, along with Kayvon Frazier, if you give it to someone in coverage. Those guys were undrafted rookie free agents. So special teams is an entree for young players, and particularly backup players and later round picks, draft picks, to make the team. And so there are a lot of moving parts on special teams.
Almost feel like sometimes they're taken for granted.
Absolutely, they are taken for granted, because the only time they're really talked about is when something bad happens. So, and an interesting note about this season, I talked about the coverage units and how I thought special teams was the most consistent unit consistent of everything with the Cowboys this year, our punt coverage unit. Chris Jones punted 66 times this year, in 16 games. Our punt coverage units allowed 75 return yards all season.
75.
That is amazing.
Wow.
Now, a lot of those punts are down. Chris is great about the either fair catches or downed inside the 20. Chris is great at directional punting, kicking it, angling it towards the sideline and not allowing room, for the returners to bring the ball back. But it's just amazing. Kayvon Frazier was terrific this year. LP Ladisar was flawless again. 13 full seasons with no mistakes on a deep snap. We know that Dan Bailey had his troubles late in the season after he came back from that groin injury. But special teams was great this year, and Bisaccia will be missed. But in answer to Grant from Brian's question, some of the other coaching changes. Derek Dooley, the wide receivers coach, his contract was up, and he had the opportunity to be the offensive coordinator at University of Missouri. So Derek, whose background was college football.
Yes.
He's a former head coach at Louisiana Tech and University of Tennessee, and he went back to college ball and is going to coordinate the offense for the Missouri Tigers. So good for Derek.
Okay.
Yeah, he'll be missed.
Real.
Really enjoyed the time with Derek. Steve Loney, who was our tight ends coach this past season, Steve retired, and so we're going to have another tight ends coach next year. It'll be Jason Witten's 16th NFL season.
Right.
And whoever is hired to be the tight ends coach will be his 8th position coach.
8th,
in 16 season. A lot of turnover at the tight ends position.
Yes.
But Steve's a great guy, and he spent the past 3 seasons with the Cowboys as an offensive assistant, offensive line assistant, and last year took over for Mike Pope as the tight ends coach. Wade Wilson, who we remember, so many of us who've been here a long time remember when he was the star at East Texas State University, way before it was Texas A&M Commerce. And, of course, he was the backup to Troy Aikman here for a couple years, but before that was a star for the Vikings and the Raiders as a starter. And so Wade, I don't know that he's officially retired, but his contract was up, and so there'll be a new quarterbacks coach. And then Joe Baker, who was our defensive backs coach this past year, his contract was not renewed, and so we'll see if Greg Jackson gets promoted from coaching the safeties to coaching defensive backs, overall cornerbacks and safeties. Certainly they'll bring in another person to help with defensive backs, so they'll add to the staff there. And there's still some speculation about offensive line coach Frank Pollock. So, in fact, I know some people right above us, one floor above us, who were chasing down some stories with Frank Pollock. So,
is that typical to have this much turnover with the coaching staff?
I think part of it has to do with like Loney being of retirement age and things like that. But yeah, I think that it's a thing, and the main thing is that. Offensive coordinator Scott Linehan and defensive coordinator Rod Marinelli are staying.
And of course head coach.
Yeah, usually what happens is when there's a staff blowout, it starts at head coach and then it trickles down. Or if you bring on a new coordinator, then a lot of times they bring on the guys who have worked with them, in previous stops.
Gotcha.
So, but yeah, having 4 and possibly 5 changes this year, that's a lot when you don't have a head coaching change and you don't have a change in coordinators other than Rich Bisaccia,
Gotcha.
special teams coordinator. The one thing for a continuity's sake from a special teams standpoint is that Keith O'Quinn, who has been the past few years the assistant special teams coach to Rich Bisaccia, but overall 8 seasons with the Cowboys, remains under contract and remains here, and I'm sure he'll have a shot to interview for the coordinator position, but I know he's very valued here and has respect of players and other coaches on the staff. So whether or not he takes over as coordinator or another role within the staff, KO, Keith O'Quinn, it's a name to remember because he's an up-and-comer.
Awesome. Okay. Diane in Red Oak, sticking with coaching, she has a good question. What do you think of the prospects of Kellen Moore as a coach?
Oh, Kellen Moore, born to coach. I mean,
coach.
Oh yeah, I think when he came here and when a lot of us got to know him, it's the same thing that we saw in 1990s with Jason Garrett, where he's going to be a coach. It's just a matter of timing. But there's will he take over as Wade Wilson? Take over for Wade Wilson as the Cowboys quarterbacks coach? That's obviously a hot rumor right now. There's nothing official on that. It's my understanding that there will be interviews for that job.
Okay.
So to just assume that he gets it, I think is a little premature. But Kellen is from a coaching family. In fact, he played for his dad, who's a longtime high school coach. He played for his own dad in high school. And I remember an interview with Kellen's dad, Tom Moore, and this is up in Washington State, that even as a little kid, running around the practice field while his dad's doing practice, that Kellen would be taking notes, right? Had a clipboard and would be taking notes. And in fact, when he played for his dad, he actually called his own plays in high school.
Oh my gosh.
Quarterback. But he's obviously a smart guy, and he came here. He knows Linehan's system very well. He was the practice team player
he's been a part
with
of
the
team
Detroit
for a long
Lions.
time, right?
Yeah, and before he came to the Cowboys, he was on the practice squad for the Detroit Lions when Scott Linehan was the offensive coordinator there. So
Okay.
he's been several years
They've got good history
in the system.
Gotcha.
Right.
Very good. Okay.
Right.
Also, another question. This one's actually from me.
Okay.
Now that we're in the off season, Dallas Cowboys are in the off season. What do the players typically do right when the season is concluded?
Well, if you're Cole Beasley, you drop your new rap song.
I listened to that last night.
What did you think of that?
Not bad. Not bad.
It's really not bad at all.
Mm-mm. No, I was really shocked.
Yeah, I was going to do. We haven't posted it yet, and in fact, I think I need to talk to you and some of the other ladies as we do 5pointsblue.com. But I went back because obviously Cole is not the first Cowboys player to record a song, and not even a hip hop or a rap song, but I went back and got the old YouTube video of Deion Sanders' 1994 album. Remember that?
Yes.
Must be the money. Actually, I might have been better than Deion on that. No, not really. But if you want a good chuckle, YouTube Must Be the Money, Deion Sanders, 1994. It was produced by MC Hammer.
That's right.
Yeah. Anyway, that's just one track from his primetime album. But no, to answer your question, actually, this is some relaxation time for the players. Kind of exhale. We know that a couple of them have already undergone surgeries to address playing hurt during the season. So Zach Martin got his elbow cleaned up and stuff. He should be good to go for the off-season work. Let's see, Malik Collins, who played all year with a bad left foot. He had a steel plate and insert in his shoe to help support that. His lip played all year with I believe it was a stress fracture in the foot, but started every game and had a terrific season. anyway, so he underwent surgery. So it's kind of a heal up, clean up time from a physical standpoint. And then it's kind of a relaxation time where basically you have a couple months before you come back and start the off-season conditioning program.
Okay.
And then with the draft in late April, the week after that will be the rookie camp. And then the veterans will join them the following week. They don't have the dates released yet for the OTAs.
Gotcha.
Or the mini camp, but the off season work, they have 2 more months before the official off season workouts, which in a conditioning program, which is voluntary.
Voluntary.
Voluntary, but highly recommended.
Of course, it's highly recommended.
Yeah. So and actually, this week and next week is also one of the very few breaks that the NFL coaches get. So unless you're in the playoffs or interviewing for one of the vacancies among the teams that have some vacancies right now, I can tell you that the Cowboys coaches staff there are several of them that are on vacation this week and next week and visiting family and things like that. And then when they come back, it's time to, start. Gosh, we're not far away from the combine and Senior Bowls and all sorts of stuff. So so we have a little player evaluation will continue looking at the guys coming in.
Gotcha. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off,
Not
but
at all.
just got a little bit of time left. Before we go, Joe in Little Rock, Arkansas has a great question.
Okay.
He wants to know what has been our biggest surprise this past season. Let me go first.
Okay. It's for like the whole season or individual players or
the whole season. What was our biggest surprise?
Okay.
I would have to say my biggest surprise this season was the performance of Des Bryant. That was my biggest surprise. I was expecting a little more.
So it could say biggest disappointment.
Yes.
In turn, I would
surprise
agree.
or disappointment.
Yeah. And I would add to that and say not only Des Bryant, but the entire passing game. I mean, Cole Beasley's numbers were so down this year, and all year.
Yeah.
And this was way before Zeke Elliott was suspended. So, I would say the passing game in general. If it were individual numbers or stats, I would say Cole Beasley.
Cole Beasley, okay.
And
I would agree.
We'll add that to your Des Bryant and maybe group that with the passing game. I'm not surprised that Dak's numbers were down.
Right.
Passer rating or that his turnovers were up. Last year was it was the greatest season in NFL history for an NFL rookie. Only 4 interceptions.
It was amazing.
I mean, it was such a great season that going into the year, I remember writing on 5 Points Blue and for Dallas Morning News live chat. We get questions each week about Dak and what I was expecting for 2017. And I'm like, he's not going to match the numbers, but you can still have a better season, but not necessarily have it reflected in the numbers. Well, it wasn't reflected in the numbers, and it wasn't reflected in the season either, as the offense particularly struggled the last month of the season in the passing game. I would say a pleasant surprise, a couple of them. I think Kayvon Frazier really had a great year. It was good to see Jeff Heath get better as the season went on and have some game-changing plays as a starting safety. But DeMarcus Lawrence, I knew he was going to have a good year, but I don't know that anybody would have predicted 14.5 sacks.
Right.
And that
was amazing.
The other thing about DeMarcus, and the reason this is top of mind, is it's something I was just writing up for 5pointsblue.com. We talked about Coach Marinelli earlier, had an interview with comments from him for a Coach's Corner segment about DeMarcus Lawrence and his Pro Bowl season. And what Marinelli says is something that I think is so important to note. And with DeMarcus Lawrence, his stellar season goes way beyond 14.5 sacks. It's the way he was relentless, the way that he played run defense as passionately and as relentlessly as he affected the passer, as he pass rushed. Because believe me, there are a lot of defensive ends in this league who just go get, they're one-trick ponies, right? They go get the quarterback, and they don't pay much attention to the run.
And like you said, he was relentless.
He was relentless. He was very good against the run, and that's the way DeMarcus Ware was too. People remember him as a great pass rusher, and whether he was defensive end or when they went to 3-4 and he played linebacker, he was good in pass coverage, but particularly good against the run. So, it was great to see DeMarcus have a great season. Among the rookies, I would say Xavier Woods playing the slot at the end of the season, but also Cooper Rush, making the 53-man roster and even usurping Kellen Moore as the number 2 quarterback. I mean, what a great thing for that young man. And people here are so high on him, and it was great to see him come in and seize his opportunity. And, nothing but onward and upward for him.
Awesome. Well, that's our time.
Are we?
We're done.
Oh, wow. Look at that. 5, 4, 3, and it is 3 o'clock Central.
That's right.
Thank you all for joining us on 5 Points Blue.
See you next week.
This has been a production of 5 Points Blue, DallasCowboys.com, and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys?